Hi there, I'm Simon Bennett and welcome back to the OMB Law Board. Today I've got Bailey from our property law team. Bailey, welcome back.
Thank you for having me again, Simon. Lovely to see you again.
So Bailey, last time you spoke to us about buying your first property and all of the events that you need to think about and be aware of. And I understand today you're going to take us on the journey and tell us what's next when you've bought that property.
That's correct. So going through the process of getting a contract is a little bit scary, seeing all the legal documents, the legal jargon. But there is also more legal obligations to consider once you do get the keys to a property. Some of those things might be rates, levies, etc., financial obligations.
Okay, so tell us about those. I mean, I own the property now. What have I got to pay going forward?
You may think it's just, the purchase price of the property you got to pay and repaying any mortgage you might have, but there is also other things such as land tax, rates that may affect the property. You may be able to compensate some exceptions for the land tax if you own the property as a principal place of residence, partly or wholly. And then also there's other things to consider with regards to previous properties you may have owned. Changing addresses, notifying service providers, etc.
So land tax is an interesting one. I understand it's a state government tax on property that you own, but you said if it's my principal place of residence, I might not pay it?
That is correct. There's an exemption for people who own partly or whole the property where they're using that as a principal place of residence. That land tax is then subsequently, there's an exemption for people who own that property using it as their home.
Well, that's good news, but if it's an investment, I'm likely to be paying it.
That's correct.
Okay, what other things should I be aware of now that I've bought my first property?
Other things you should be aware of is if you're buying in a body corporate, whether that be in an apartment complex or in a gated community, for example. There's things such as body corporate bylaws that you need to be aware about. They control generally the regulations and rules from the day-to-day interactions you have with other lot owners and the general community living.
Yeah, right. So bylaws, I hear that time a bit in body corporates. Does that tell me what I can and can't do? How does that regulate my activity living in this community title scheme?
Oh, that is correct. It kind of outlines what you can and can't do with certain respects. There's obviously things that are outside the control of the body corporate. However, the main things we see are regulating what type of pets you may have, if you're allowed to smoke and where you're allowed to smoke, and then also parking situations are the primary ones we usually see.
Okay. And associated with my body corporate, there's some more financial obligations, aren't there? How do they work?
There are some more financial obligations with respect to levies that you'll have to pay. That's usually the admin fund, sinking fund. They're kind of the day-to-day expenses that you would expect in a body corporate. And that's kind of your expenses for the body corporate running, any managers they might have, etc. And then also, if you are owning in a body corporate, it is good to get insurance on the property.
Okay.
You don't own the building and you don't have insurance over the building. So you should get body corporate contents insurance to cover what's inside your property, as you only really own the paint inwards.
So insurance is a really interesting one. At what point should I be thinking about getting insurance on a property that I'm buying?
For general properties as well as body corporates, we'd recommend that the day after you sign the contract, you are liable for that property. So we'd recommend contacting an insurance broker or getting insurance if you already know someone, and organising that. And then further as well, if you're investing in the property, it may be relevant to get contents insurance, building insurance, and then some landlord insurance if it's going to be rented out to some tenants.
That's a really interesting point, isn't it? So as a standard term in our REIQ contracts in Queensland, the property is at your risk the day after you sign the contract. And many people can miss that and find themselves in an uninsured position.
Correct, yes.
Okay. So what else, what other considerations should I have? I've got this new property. I've now got it insured. I understand my financial obligations for rates, land tax, body corporate, etc. What other considerations do I need to have about this property?
The next kind of steps would be seeing if you want to do any renovations to the property. You might not like some things in the property. You may want to remove a wall, etc. It's relevant to consider getting certain building approvals. That's a big one. And then also making sure that if you are doing that, considering any, whether that be getting some experienced contractors, getting the qualified contractors,
Yeah.
and then making sure you contact a town planner to ensure that what you want to do with the property is in line with what's available.
Yeah, they're interesting considerations, aren't they? So I've got to be within the appropriate zoning, speaking to a town planner, making sure that if I'm doing renovations or extensions, that it fits within what the scope of that property is.
Yeah.
And understanding that I can't just go and build a pergola or a carport, etc. I do need local authority approvals.
That's correct, yes.
And this is important not only during the term of my ownership, but also if I want to sell,
Yeah.
I need to make sure that I've got approved building works.
That is another thing as well. With the new disclosure laws that are coming into place in August 2025, the seller has more of an obligation from now on, where in comparison to the previous system where it was the buyer does their own kind of searches, etc. There's going to be a lot more impact on the seller providing significant disclosure, whether that's to any of the renovations, etc. We're still yet to find exactly what that might entail, but we'll keep you guys updated when we do find out the disclosure requirements.
Well, fantastic, Bailey. Thanks for coming in today. I really appreciate you giving us a bit of an insight as to what a young investor or a young homeowner should be looking for now that they've bought their first property, because it doesn't stop with that ownership, does it?
No, it does not. Well, thank you very much for having me, Simon. I appreciate being on here again.
And if any of our audience has questions for Bailey or any of our property team, please drop us a line below and we'll do our best to get back to you and inform you about those issues that you're having.